You remember the 80s and 90s as the golden age of toys, and in a lot of ways they were. But for every toy that lived up to the hype, there were dozens that looked incredible in commercials and completely fell apart in real life. Hey there, nostalgia lovers! Welcome to Nostalgia Area. Today, we're counting down 15 toys from the 80s and 90s that promised magic, excitement, and endless fun, but delivered frustration, disappointment, and occasionally minor bodily injury. Back then, there were no YouTube reviews, no influencers warning you to save your allowance, no unboxing videos exposing the truth. All you had was the commercial, and those commercials could sell anything. If a kid on TV looked excited enough, we were convinced we'd found the greatest invention in human history. Then Christmas morning arrived. Let's rewind. Mr. Frosty promised that you'd be running your own frozen treat empire right from the kitchen counter. The commercials showed kids effortlessly making colorful slushies while their friends gathered around in admiration. Reality was a little different. Most of your time was spent wrestling with ice cubes that refused to cooperate. The crank was stubborn. The ice flew everywhere except where it was supposed to go. And after 20 minutes of effort, you ended up with something closer to crunchy snow than a proper slushie. The dream was an ice cream stand. The reality was unpaid manual labor. Domino Rally made every kid think they were about to become a master engineer. The box showed elaborate chain reactions worthy of a science museum. Bridges, loops, ramps, and spinning mechanisms all working together perfectly. What the box didn't show was the hour-long setup process. One accidental bump from a sibling, a pet, or your own elbow could destroy everything. And even if you successfully built the course, something almost always jammed halfway through. After 60 minutes of work, your masterpiece lasted about 20 seconds. Few toys had better commercials than Mousetrap. The elaborate Rube Goldberg machine looked fascinating. The boot kicked the bucket, the ball rolled down the stairs, and somehow a mouse got trapped at the end. Kids quickly learned that building the contraption was more fun than actually playing the game. Pieces got lost, the ball got stuck, the diver missed the bathtub. Eventually, most of us simply dropped the cage manually and made the sound effects ourselves. In hindsight, Mousetrap was less of a board game and more of an assembly project. Released in 1979 but still popular throughout the 80s, Big Trak felt incredibly futuristic. You could program commands into a computerized tank and watch it execute them. At least, that was the idea. In practice, getting Big Trak to do exactly what you wanted required the planning skills of a NASA engineer. One wrong command and your carefully programmed mission became an expensive collision with the coffee table. It wasn't a bad concept. It was just about 20 years ahead of the technology needed to make it fun. Thanks to Home Alone 2, every kid suddenly wanted a Talkboy. Kevin McAllister used it to outsmart adults, fool hotel employees, and generally became the coolest kid on earth. Unfortunately, the real-world experience was far less exciting. You recorded your voice, you played it back slower, you laughed, then you did it again. By day 3, you'd run out of ideas. The Talkboy wasn't really a toy. It was a movie prop that somehow convinced millions of kids to ask for it anyway. The concept was brilliant. Pour colorful goo into metal molds, heat everything up, and create your own bugs and monsters. What could possibly go wrong? Quite a lot, actually. The original Thingmaker versions became notorious for safety concerns because the metal molds became extremely hot. Yet, generations of kids still wanted one. The finished creations rarely looked as good as the pictures. The goo smelled questionable, and the entire process felt like a science experiment your parents weren't entirely comfortable supervising. Still, we loved them, mostly because danger was practically a feature in 80s toy design. Stretch Armstrong seemed indestructible. You could stretch him across the room, twist him into knots, and he'd supposedly bounce right back. Until he didn't. The moment that rubber skin tore, the mysterious corn syrup-based filling escaped and coated everything it touched. Carpet fibers, pet hair, dust, your hands. Stretch Armstrong transformed from superhero to sticky disaster in seconds. And yet many kids kept theirs long after they were ruined. which raises several questions we'd rather not answer. When Teddy Ruxpin debuted in 1985, it was revolutionary. This wasn't just a teddy bear. It read stories. Its eyes moved, its mouth moved. It felt like something from the future. For a while, it became one of the hottest toys in America. Then the battery started dying. Suddenly, Teddy's cheerful storytelling slowed to a creepy crawl. His eyes half closed, his voice deepened, and bedtime became significantly less relaxing. Technology was impressive. Nightmares were free. This choice might be controversial because POGs worked exactly as intended. The question is whether they should have been a toy phenomenon in the first place. In the mid-90s, kids built entire social hierarchies around decorated cardboard circles. Schools banned them. Trades happened daily. Collections became serious business. When you step back and think about it, we essentially convinced ourselves that cardboard discs were treasure. That's not a criticism. It's honestly kind of impressive. Skip It was simple. Swing the ball around your ankle and jump over it. What could be easier? Apparently, quite a lot. For many kids, Skip It was less a toy and more a device specifically engineered to attack ankles. The built-in counter encouraged you to keep going despite repeated impacts. Every bruise became motivation to beat your previous score. Looking back, it's amazing how much pain we were willing to endure for playground bragging rights. Moon shoes looked incredible in commercials. Kids bounced across backyards as if gravity itself became optional. The actual experience involved strapping tiny trampolines to your feet and discovering that walking was suddenly a challenge. Balance disappeared. Coordination vanished. Ankles entered the chat. The idea was fantastic. The execution felt like an insurance claim waiting to happen. If we're ranking commercials, Crossfire belongs near the top. The famous theme song made it look like the most intense game ever created. Kids battled amid flying metal balls and explosive excitement. The real game was noticeably calmer. A lot calmer. In fact, the commercial contained more action than most actual matches. But that jingle? Still legendary. In 1997, Tiger Electronics decided to challenge Nintendo. Their weapon was the Game.com, one of the earliest touchscreen handheld gaming devices ever released. On paper, it sounded amazing. Touchscreen controls, internet features, popular game franchises. In reality, the blurry screen and sluggish performance made many games frustrating to play. The Game Boy sold over 100 million units. The Game.com barely registered as competition. Sometimes being first isn't enough. You also have to be good. The Power Glove may be the single coolest looking game accessory ever made. Released by Mattel in 1989, it promised motion controls years before the Wii existed. The commercial made it seem like players could control games with futuristic hand movements. The reality was far less impressive. The sensors struggled. The controls were inconsistent. Setup was complicated. But here's the fascinating part. Most kids still wanted one, even after hearing it wasn't very good. Because sometimes the dream matters more than the product, and few toys ever looked more futuristic than the Power Glove. Nintendo believed the Virtual Boy represented the future. Created under the supervision of legendary Nintendo designer Gunpei Yokoi, it promised a new dimension of gaming. Literally. Commercials showcased immersive 3D experiences unlike anything players had ever seen. Then people actually tried it. The headset wasn't really a headset. It sat on a table. Players had to lean forward awkwardly and stare into a display filled almost entirely with red graphics. Many users complained about eye strain and headaches. Nintendo even recommended frequent breaks. Less than a year after launch, the system was discontinued. Only 22 games were ever released. The Virtual Boy wasn't just disappointing, it became one of gaming's most famous failures. And yet, we still remember it. Not because it worked, because of what it promised. Most of these toys weren't nearly as good as we remember. Some barely worked. Some were frustrating. Some probably should have come with protective equipment. But that's not what stayed with us. What we remember is seeing the commercial. What we remember is circling the toy in the catalog. What we remember is the excitement. For a few days, or maybe just a few minutes, we believed that toy was going to be the greatest thing we'd ever owned. That's what nostalgia is. Not the product, the promise. So now it's your turn. What's the one toy you begged your parents for that turned out to be a huge disappointment? Was it on this list? Or is there another forgotten disaster we should have included? Drop it in the comments. And until next time, stay nostalgic.